Hello, sir. How are you doing?
I am well. How are you?
I am excellent. Thank you. Thanks for coming to my show.
My pleasure.
So can you introduce my followers who you are and fitness journey, please?
Sure. My name is John Paul Catanzaro, and I've been at this now for, well over 25 years. For me, it started back in, actually, it goes way back to when I was a young kid. And I was involved in many sports, baseball, soccer. I played competitive hockey, and my lower back started to hurt me. And I remember one night, an uncle and aunt were over, and they said, you should go and see a friend of ours. He's a physiotherapist and he can help you. I was only 13 years old. So I went to see this physio. His name is Dan Palma, and he happened to be a trainer on the San Francisco 49ers team back when they had Montana and Rice and all. They were very successful. So one of the first things he did for me was he said, I'm going to put you on a strength training program. And one of the first exercises he gave me was the back squat. He says, the squat is going to help your back. And so I started doing this routine that he gave me. At the same time, two brothers had moved to my town from California, and they also were avid weight trainers. And so we started training together. I had an old York and Weider bench and weights. And so I started doing it 3 times a week, and I started to get hooked. And eventually I decided to direct my studies toward kinesiology and health science. I elected to go to York University. And my final year, I was hired as a fitness director at a club in Markham, Ontario. And so I did that for almost exactly a year. They went under almost a year later, and that's when I started implementing personal training at my home. I went out on my own, and so I started in '96, and it's been, 2 facilities now, hundreds of clients, and like I said, about 25 years that I've been in the business. And the business is still going quite strong. So that's how I got into the fitness journey.
Amazing, amazing.
Yeah.
So what is your morning routine looks like?
My morning routine, I typically wake up now around 6:30. Pre-COVID, it was 5 o'clock every morning, but now COVID has bought me an extra hour. And I usually eat first thing in the morning. And from there, I come down into my home office. I take care of a few emails and do some reading and writing. And I have my first client at 8 o'clock, typically across the board, 8 o'clock. These days it's virtual. And that usually will comprise the first few hours of my day. Yeah.
Okay. So when do you work out?
So then I work out shortly thereafterwards. My workout is at 10 a.m. and I do that 4 days a week. So Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday are my typical days. And in the summer, I sometimes implement some energy system training or some interval training. And that is typically early on a Saturday morning. But for the most part, strength training is done 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday.
Okay, so how long you train?
An average workout will last anywhere from an hour to an hour and 15 max, not including a very short warm-up. We know from research that once you start going over that mark, the testosterone to cortisol ratio is unfavorable. So I try to keep it within that realm. If it's going to be a longer workout, I'll use some peri-workout nutrition to help counter some of the catabolic effects. Branched chain amino acids are quite effective for that. But usually I'll work out from 10 to 11, perhaps 11:15. And then I get ready, I take a shower, and I'll have my first client. My next client will be at noon. So, and that's how I go. But yeah, so it's a 4-day system, about an hour, and it comprises it's a 4-day split. So I will usually train on Mondays. It's an upper body workout. It's with a vertical push-pull emphasis. Tuesday, it's a lower body workout, and it's basically a squat-based workout. Thursday is upper body, and that's horizontal push-pull emphasis. And then Friday is lower body, and that's more of a deadlift-based protocol and posterior chain. And that's usually how I train for the most part.
So, so you have your own periodization per year?
So, I'm sorry, say that again?
Do you have your training routine? Like so what's your routine like? Do you do like a hypertrophy, strength, endurance, everything, or?
So typically in the winter months, I train for strength, and then it starts to convert into hypertrophy. And during the summer, I'll train for body composition. So the training starts to alter. And then as the fall comes along, I start cycling more for mass and strength, and then body comp and so forth. This year, I'm not so inclined. My body composition is pretty good. I've stayed quite lean. I do what I like to term a 2 to 6 pack rotation. So, you know, in the fall, in the winter, I'll have like a 2-pack when I'm training for size and strength. And then in the spring and fall, it's a 4-pack. And in the summer, I get my 6-pack with the body composition training. But this year, I've been able to stay pretty lean throughout. Sometimes what happens with the body comp is you sacrifice a little bit of size and strength. And this year, I want to maintain that as much as possible. I want to see if I can push it a little bit longer. So far we're doing quite well.
Yeah, you look amazing. What's your status? What's your height and weight, winter and summer?
I usually hover around 200 pounds. I'm about 5'10". And so usually in the summer, I'll let that come down to about 195. If I go any lower than 5 pounds, I feel very weak. It really compromises my energy and my size. And then again, in the winter, I won't go beyond 205. So I'll let it climb to about 205. Anything above that, and I feel bloated. I don't feel comfortable. So it's a 10-pound range that will, but usually I hover around 200 pounds. A fairly low body fat.
Yeah. So what was your weight when you were 20?
Oh, I would say around 180.
Oh, okay.
180 at that age. Yeah. And I was very strong, actually quite strong at 180, believe it or not. Smaller version of me now, but very strong. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. So if you can only do 10 minutes a day, rest of your life,
yeah,
only you can train 4 times a week, 10 minutes.
Okay.
What kind of movement exercise you will do and why?
Well,
10 minutes only.
10 minutes only. Okay. Well, I'll tell you this. I tell most people that strength training will kill many birds with one stone. Okay. So it gives you the biggest training results for your effort. So we know that yoga and stretching improves flexibility. We know that Pilates improves core stability. We know that aerobics can improve your cardiovascular and cardiorespiratory endurance, right? Well, strength training does all the above and then some. So it's a big bang type of exercise because you can get a lot done in a short period of time. So if I'm training solely for strength and you're telling me I only have 10 minutes,
10 minutes,
I will pick one of the primary lifts and I will do multiple sets of low reps within that 10-minute time frame. So as many sets as I can do within that 10-minute time frame of lower reps. If I'm training for hypertrophy, then I would utilize an age-old concept known as the 20-rep method with a 10 RM load. Randall Strausen made this popular back in the day with his book Super Squats. But if you've ever tried it, you know how difficult it is. You do a couple warm-up sets and you basically take, let's say a squat, you take a 10 RM load, you do your 10 repetitions, your body and your mind want to rack it, but you stay there, you take a breath or two, and then you do another rep or two, and you continue until you get 20, then you rack the bar, and then you die on the floor. And in 10 minutes, you'll get a very thorough workout. And if you try that for some of the big lifts, you'll see that you don't need much more than that. So that's excellent for hypertrophy. And if it's body comp, then I would do a staggered circuit. So I would do a circuit alternating between upper and lower body exercise as much as I can within that 10-minute time frame. So maybe in the winter, I would do the first method. In the spring and fall, I would do that second method. And in the summer, I would do the third.
So include that would be your cardio as well, right?
Yeah, people, you'd be quite surprised what weight training can do for cardio. If you do that set that I was telling you about, the 20 with a 10 RM load, you will be so winded, okay? Tell me that doesn't give you cardio.
For sure.
I mean, well, think about it. The squat alone works over 250 muscles in the human body. You incur such a huge oxygen debt, utilizing an RM load, that people don't realize that in terms of cardiovascular health, it's one of the best movements you can do. Dr. Doug McGuff has talked about this quite extensively in the past. In fact, they're advocating weight training more so than aerobics for cardiac patients. So,
yeah, I don't do cardio. My weight training is cardio.
Yeah, that's the cardio, right?
Yes.
Eat clean and do your weight training, and that should be more than sufficient.
That's right. That's right. So what is your nutrition like? How many times a day do you eat? What time?
You can consider my nutrition as a cross between paleo and primal, okay? So I basically go back to nature with my food. I eat 4 times a day, solid food. And on days that I train, then I'll include some liquid nutrition around my workouts, right? But it's relatively low carb, but it depends on what phase I'm in. The more volume I do, the more carbohydrates I'll consume, right?
Yeah, like Charles Poliquin said, you need to earn your carb.
Exactly. You have to earn your carbs. And if you earn your carbs, then by all means, consume them.
That's right. You can't eat the same carb your leg day and your arm day, or,
No, and I think that's one of the issues a lot of people have when they go on like a ketogenic type of diet. They gas out very quickly if they don't have enough carbs. It can be very difficult with, especially on a body composition regimen, right?
Yeah,
so,
volume training.
Yeah.
But if you do the nervous system, you don't have to worry about a lot of carb, right?
Exactly. So if you keep your reps relatively low and your volume is relatively low, then you don't need as much carbohydrates. I think people fool themselves. Dr. Eric Serrano has shown that at most post-workout, 35 to 50 grams of carbohydrates for the average workout is sufficient, if that. And it doesn't have to come from, that glucose doesn't have to come from carbohydrates. You can get it from certain glucogenic amino acids, like glutamine, for instance. So 8 grams of glutamine can replicate almost 20 grams or so of carbs, right? So there's been research done on that. So there are other ways to get it.
Yeah, a lot of people eat too much carbs.
Yes.
Yeah. So how about supplement?
So supplements, what I recommend to others is what I do myself. So
yeah, yours, like advanced.
Well, the big 2 that I always recommend, okay, are the ones that you're deficient in. You supplement what you're deficient in. So what's the number 1 deficiency in terms of vitamins?
Vitamin D.
And what's the number 1 deficiency in terms of minerals?
Magnesium. Yeah.
Okay. Those are the 2 we found. Like today, there's a lot of talk about zinc, for instance, especially to improve your immune system. But what I found from experience is that you can replete zinc actually quite quickly, and then you can experience problems. So people have to be careful on how much zinc they supplement. But magnesium is very difficult to replete. It's utilized in hundreds of chemical reactions in the body. And with just the soils are so depleted, and because we're under so much stress, it keeps pulling magnesium levels down. So that's one I would recommend. And of course, vitamin D, we know that we should be supplementing, especially during these days with COVID. But most people don't take a sufficient amount. And for most adults, really, you need about 4,000 to 5,000 IUs a day at least in the winter months, maybe not so much during the summer months, but at least in the winter months. And most people, they'll do 1 or 2 drops and think that they're covered. And unfortunately, when you take a 25 hydroxy vitamin D test, you'll see that they're woefully low, right?
Yeah.
And that makes a big difference. That'll upregulate a lot of mechanisms in the human body. So those are 2 for sure. A good comprehensive multi during the day. For some people, fish oil omega-3s are warranted. But if your omega-6s are relatively low in your diet, you may not need as many omega-3s, especially if you eat fish and walnuts on a regular basis. And then one that I recommend, of course, digestive support after a certain age is important. I have a proteozyme formula that I use both prophylactically and also as a treatment if I'm experiencing any type of injury. It works like a charm. But the key there is to take it between meals, to take it on an empty stomach so that it digests the protein of your tissue rather than the protein in your meal. But typically I'll take that twice a day, first thing in the morning before going to bed, and sometimes post-workout.
So what do you use so far regularly for yourself?
I have a line of supplements that I use on a regular basis, and so I don't want to seem like I'm pushing my line, but those are the ones that I use pretty much daily. But I'm always experimenting with different things, and so it depends what phase of training I'm in will also determine what I'm taking. So it can alter. I'll probably bore your listeners if we go through it all.
I try a lot of things too. Yeah. Experiment. What do you think about melatonin and CBD?
Actually, let me go back for 1 second. I also take 2 days off of supplements every week.
Completely.
Wednesdays and Sundays, I take no supplements. And to give the body a bit of a break, and also to stay sensitive to the supplements. So
do you rotate blend too?
I rotate blends, so it depends on what we're talking about. So for instance, fish oils. I think we have an excellent brand, but I encourage people to rotate both the brands and the sources, okay? So that they can get different qualities from different brands. So for instance, like in the winter, you'll do higher cod liver oil that has a higher amount of vitamins A and D. And then you can pull in salmon and anchovies, and then you can pull in krill oil and so forth. And so you can rotate the brands and the sources. Now you were asking, I'm sorry, about CBD and?
Melatonin.
Okay, so a colleague of mine, Dr. Fred Huey, he's very big on melatonin, and not so much for sleep per se, but more so for anti-aging. And as you get older, your melatonin levels drop, and he can recommend as much as 20 milligrams a night. Because the way he explains it is that the body has like a reservoir, and when the reservoir is low, you're basically topping it back up. Me personally, I don't use much melatonin. I will use it occasionally if I'm having difficulty falling asleep, but that's usually not a problem for me. My wife, on the other hand, she uses it almost every night. And I have some colleagues that even use a very high amount, like as much as 80 milligrams. So it varies, but I'm very cautious when I recommend these sort of things to clients. If we're going to experiment, we usually start with a low amount first. If we need something that's fast acting, a spray works quite well. If they have difficulty, if they have sleep maintenance insomnia, then we might use a prolonged release melatonin that'll kick in a little bit later in sleep. So it depends on the individual, but it's not my first resort. My first resort is usually something a little more natural, and that is magnesium. And we'll start off, we'll titrate the dose to find the appropriate dose for them. And we'll start off with magnesium, and magnesium is excellent even for kids. And you can use a magnesium oil and you can apply it to the feet, for instance. So magnesium works quite well initially. And if it doesn't, then we can start to experiment with melatonin or some other sleep aids. Yeah.
Yeah. So evening, so you probably don't sleep well, a lot of blue light exposure, or like jet lag. Yeah, before I go to the melatonin, I go magnesium L-threonate and glutamine and probiotic.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
I typically will recommend probiotics later in the day. Yes. What we have found, or what research is showing, is that probiotics are best taken with a meal. We used to always recommend it away from meals, but the acidity, actually, the pH is much lower when you on an empty stomach, so you get more die-off. It's actually better with the meal, and I prefer that people take it on the last meal of the day, so that it sort of prepares the bowels for elimination the following morning. So it works a little bit better if you take it at dinner. In terms of probiotics. And again, we'll vary the sources of that as well. We have a multi-strain brand, but Soroil is excellent as well. Their HMF product, Genestra's HMF product, works quite well, and we get powders in for the kids. So that works quite well. Yeah.
how about what do you think about CBD?
I
For
have
sleep and then
mixed
inflammation. Pardon me?
I have mixed thoughts about CBD. I think it can be useful for some. But I prefer that it's medically prescribed, because a lot of the combinations out there are not standardized. If you get it medically prescribed from a reputable pharmaceutical company, then it's standardized. Okay, so we've done that quite a bit. I think it's excellent for pain management and for some people for sleep. But with that said, there's also evidence that it can be estrogenic and may lower testosterone levels. So you have to pick your poison, right? So I don't think it's useful for everyone, but it does have its use, yes.
Do you ever personally use it?
I have not, no.
Yeah, I went to US and tried it. So US is illegal, right? So Designs for Health, so they have their brand as well. So US. I tried it. I had a really good deep sleep.
Yeah, it can definitely help your sleep. We've used it with several clients, and we prefer the oil. For cancer treatment, there's a special formulation that you can get. It's called Phoenix Tears, that you can look into. And the key is to titrate the dose, to find the dose that's appropriate for you. But I don't believe in having any THC with it. Strictly CBD as much as possible.
Yeah.
And the oils tend to work well. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's different receptor site.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you can only eat 5 to 7 things rest of your life, what would you eat and why?
Let me see. Potato chips, chocolates. No. Think of the word protein, Joe. Protein, it's derived from a Greek word that basically means priority or of greatest importance. So it would definitely be based on protein foods initially. So red meat, eggs, salmon, that kind of thing. And then to get the micronutrients in and fiber, plenty of vegetables from all colors. I'm a big fan of mixed greens. And then from there, nuts are excellent. They provide quite a bit of benefit. And so for instance, the meat and nuts type of breakfast works quite well. Having a hearty salad at lunch, and then bringing in some of the salmon at night because of the higher omega-3s when your insulin sensitivity is a little bit poorer. And then, like I said, my diet is a combo of paleo and primal, so I don't mind having some dairy, some clean dairy as a bedtime meal because of the higher tryptophan values. Dairy is actually better at night, not early in the day, as opposed to red meat and eggs, which have more tyrosine, which will help wake you up, make you more awake, alert, coherent, right? And then I would finish it off with water, plenty of water, right? Those would be the 5 to 7 foods I would eat.
Do you have a cheat or a reward meal?
So my cheat meal, if you want to call it a cheat meal,
Or reward meal, yeah.
Is on the weekends, I like red wine. I especially like Amarone, but on the weekends, I'll have 2 glasses of red wine with dinner and on Saturday and Sunday. And sometimes I might have a dark chocolate. The key with dark chocolate, by the way, I consider them a bit of a cheat meal. You might not, but because red wine contains antioxidants, can actually have some health benefits, and so can the dark chocolate. The dark chocolate, here's a little tip. If you take a little square of it, put it under your tongue, and let it dissolve slowly sublingually, and then it hits that opioid receptor. So it has much better benefit in that regard. But I may have that with my espresso. I have one vice. I eat very, very clean. I'm very disciplined, but I have one nutritional vice, and that is espresso. I have 2 espressos every morning with breakfast. I have one after lunch and one after dinner. I'm born and bred on espresso. And when I have it in the morning, it has to be on the stove, the way my grandmother used to make it. I love the aroma that fills up the house. So I have it on the stove, and I'll have it with, a handful of nuts with my breakfast. It brings out the flavor. It's beautiful. And at lunch and dinner with my wife, I'll make us, a nice salad, and we have it afterwards. And I have a nice machine that will make it, but that's my one vice. And I don't want to take it out.
If that work for you, why not?
Yeah, it works. But I will say that the caffeine will slightly dehydrate you. And even the red wine on the weekend, you will be slightly dehydrated. And I've been able to remedy that somewhat with my water intake, but specifically water with salt. That's the key. But if you really wanted to be like get an A+ in terms of your nutritional intake, if I wanted to, I would take out the espresso and I would bring in bone broth instead as a liquid little meal. But the espresso works for me.
Yeah, a little bit of balance.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
Yeah. So how you monitor your health? Like you measure your blood work, HRV, deep, and REM sleep?
Yeah. I take blood work at least 2 or 3 times a year. I have 2 physicians, friends of mine that will run anything I want. So we do blood work at least 2 or 3 times a year. I like to monitor that. And in terms of HRV, I use an Oura ring, and I use it primarily for sleep because I don't really track my activity that much. I'll enter my workouts, but I don't wear it during the day. I'm more concerned about my sleep. And so I like to see how much deep sleep, how much REM sleep I get. And also it gives me, a score in terms of readiness. But I take that with a grain of salt because there are days when it tells me, your readiness is poor, ease up on your workouts. And I have great workouts. And on the flip side, there'll be days when I score really high on the readiness and I may have a mediocre workout. So I do take it with a grain of salt,
Yeah, I love salt too. I use a Celtic sea salt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So do you measure omega-3 index? And do you ever measure omega-3 index and then your IGF-1?
So I have measured IGF-1. I have not measured omega-3 index. I've had this discussion with Dr. Huey, and he's not too convinced on the effectiveness. Omega Quant is one that you could use. There's a couple companies that you can use. But I will say I have measured IGF-1. And specifically, when I brought out my Brain and Brawn formula, I wanted to see what effect it would have on growth hormone. And growth hormone is so transient, you can't really test it. It's much better to test IGF-1. And we had quite a boost in IGF-1 after it was about a 6-week period on the Brain and Brawn formula. And it also had a nice boost in free testosterone. So that's when I knew I've come on to something over here.
So do you measure also fasting insulin?
Fasting insulin is one that you definitely should measure, especially if you have an individual that might be pre-diabetic or diabetic. That's definitely one to look at. Yep. We do comprehensive testing. I like to look at all the hormones to see how they're responding. Again, the vitamins, we like to, you don't want to guess. You want to see, and you want to see what type of effect your supplements are having. So 25 hydroxy D for sure, but magnesium, that's one that most people should be tested for. And it's not the regular serum magnesium. You have to look for RBC, red blood cell magnesium. You got to spend the money for that.
It's not covered by OHIP.
No, it's not.
Yeah, I pay around like $300 for my blood work.
Yeah, you're gonna pay for some of these tests for sure, right?
Yeah,
like
it's worth it.
You're gonna test testosterone, getting bioavailable. You're gonna have to pay for that. There's a bunch, right?
Yeah, but it's worth it.
Yeah.
So in your knowledge and experience, what is the most important thing for our quality and longevity of life?
There's an old Chinese proverb, Joe, that goes like this. The secret to living to 100 years old is to sweat a little bit every day. And I believe in that. I believe there's some wisdom in that, okay? So exercise, obviously, and physical activity is important. Of course, I recommend strength training above all, because there's research out of Tufts University that has shown that in terms of the biomarkers for longevity, and vitality for that matter, but in terms of longevity, number one is muscle size, muscle mass, and number two is muscle strength in the hierarchy of things. And everything else in turn, including cardiovascular health, is much lower down the line. So maintaining your muscle mass and your strength as you age is imperative. And that's why I'm such a big fan of strength training. And if you do too much cardio, for instance, you can actually increase the atrophy of muscle tissue if you're not careful, right? So definitely exercise is number one. I would say in terms of nutrition, again, going back to nature, getting off of all these processed, packaged, and refined foods. But the one aspect that trumps them all, definitely trumps them all, is sleep. Sleep should be your number one priority as you age, right?
Yeah, so yeah, if you don't sleep well, you increase insulin resistance. Yeah,
right.
Inflammation, reduce aim. Yeah. So me, I think right now feeling so good, nice and healthy. I listen to my body. I think I will be like 90 to 128, nice and strong. So what do you think about you? What do you think about you?
How long I'm going to live?
Yeah, what do you think?
I think I've already exceeded my lifespan, to be honest. I'll tell you, my father passed away at the age of 41 of colon cancer. And my mother just passed away last year at the age of 68. And with regards to colon cancer, that is one cancer that there's very high incidence of inheriting a mutated gene from an affected parent, right? So I have that against me. And also in terms of colon cancer, the research shows that those that consume the highest amount of meat is a risk factor, red meat especially, is a risk factor for colon cancer. And I eat a lot of red meat. But the reason why I think I'm still on this earth and doing well is because of my lifestyle. So it's this whole concept of epigenetics, right? Above your genes, right? So if your genes are the gun, epigenetics are the trigger that pulls the gun. I haven't pulled the gun. Why? Because the types of meat that I eat are not the types that they've researched. They've researched garbage meats. They've researched meats that are highly processed, grain-fed, and so forth. They contain chemicals, toxins, hormones. That's not the type of meat that I eat. I eat pasture-raised, grass-fed meat predominantly, right? So there's a big difference. And it's because of my lifestyle that I think I'll be able to go a little bit further than, perhaps where my parents have been, Yeah.
So, a lot of people, for example, insulin like growth factor 1, IGF-1 is very high. That is a high chance to get a cancer, right? Yeah. But people, they go, high protein with high sugar, increase IGF-1. So when you maintain or lower your sugar, even if your protein take high, IGF-1 is not going so much. So so I think it's longevity, like you said, and I would say to also manage your improve your insulin sensitivity, because insulin is the aging hormone.
Yeah, well, insulin combines with growth hormone in the liver to produce IGF-1. So that's where, you hit the nail on the head. Yes.
Yeah. So like I'm a big, like I used to eat like, I tried my height and 5'9.5". I used to be, my lightest one was 130, heaviest one was 205. But now I'm around 170. So I nowadays I love like intermittent fasting.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if I need high brain function, I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, if I go expensive seminar, I eat midnight breakfast.
Right.
For my brain function. But if I like a regular day, I like to fast for the longevity. Yeah. So now, if you can meet 20 years of yourself, what kind of advice you will give yourself?
I would say, and I would say this to any 20-year-old today, stop overtraining and stop under recovering. Okay. So back in the day, we used to do, 2-hour marathon workouts, maybe 3, right? We'd be doing 1 million sets. I found the value of tapering is very important. And so that's something that I would incorporate with the 20-year-olds, which I do on a regular basis, to pull back the reins when necessary, and then to let them go when they have to, right? And also in terms of under recovery, a lot of teenagers and people in their early 20s, they do quite well during the week, but come the weekend, they're basically burning the candle on both ends, and they stay up way too late. They party all night long. They drink a lot of alcohol. They might do some recreational drugs. For every hour, actually, it's not even an hour, for every half an hour that you sleep past your regular time, it can take you a full day to catch up in terms of your circadian rhythms. So if you're sleeping, if you're going to bed in the wee hours of the night, you could basically ruin the entire week coming up. And testosterone levels get depressed. You have some of these guys that smoke a joint on Friday night. Well, their testosterone won't return to baseline until Monday, right? So all these things, you're shooting yourself in the foot, right? So I would I was pretty good back in the day, but I would say, there is, on the weekend, you would definitely go out and you would get back late, and then it would make things really difficult. So all that hard work can get offset by one bad weekend, right? So that's what I would definitely tell 20-year-old of myself, but also the 20-year-olds that I see on a regular basis. It just depends on how badly you want it.
Yeah, that's right. So do you have a favorite failure of yours?
I would say that every injury that I've sustained over the years has been a lesson for sure. But the one that I would consider my favorite failure would be an ankle injury that happened almost exactly 10 years ago. It was, I think it was July of 2011. And I was just back here in my backyard. There were some branches that were rubbing. We have a ravine lot, and there's some branches that were rubbing against my shed. So I went out there, I cleared up some of these branches one morning. And as I was jumping off the fence, I landed and rolled my ankle on the river rock. I didn't have time to deal with it. I came inside, quickly showered, and got ready for my first client. I had a whole slew of clients all day long. And the ankle just started the pain and the inflammation. By the time my last client left, I was putting on a brave face, but the time I closed the door, my ankle was very swollen and very painful. And I got on it right away. And I incorporated a method that I later termed meth. And it put me on the map, I'll tell you that. I've had so many interviews, many magazines called. And if you just Google my name and meth, you'll see what it's about. The meth is an acronym that stands for movement, elevation, traction, and heat. it's almost the complete opposite of what we were taught in school, which is RICE, rest, ice, compression, and elevation, which can have a very detrimental effect. But because I got on it ASAP and I was able to do some movements under traction and utilize some of the proteolytic enzymes and so forth, so basically bringing nutrition in and garbage out and doing that as much as possible to clear the swelling, I was able to train within a couple of days doing a lower body workout, and 4 days later I was doing a med ball workout. Basically, that injury was recovered in hours instead of days or weeks. And the METH acronym we have used, in fact, I had an ankle injury a couple months ago, same thing. I used it right away. And again, following day, no issues. I've used it with a number of clients. It works like a charm. So it's a new paradigm, and it's something that I would encourage the viewers to look into. Instead of grabbing that ice pack and just elevating your legs and passively just trying to heal it in that manner, consider active movement and movement under traction if possible. And you can Google it and you'll see a number of examples.
Wow, amazing. So what is one of the best or worthwhile investment you were ever made? Could be money or time or energy.
Okay. There's one device that I have that if it breaks today, I will have it replaced tomorrow. And it is called a Qi machine. Do you know what a Qi machine is, Joe?
No.
So a Qi machine is this device that has these two little pads, okay? And it goes side to side. So you lay on the ground, you put your ankles on these pads, and it moves your legs side to side like this, okay?
Okay.
And it was a colleague of mine that introduced me, Yusuf Omar, to this many years ago. And what it does is it simulates almost the fin of a swimming fish, okay? But it's excellent for improved circulation, lymphatic drainage, and so forth. But it has another very interesting effect. And that is it induces sleep almost instantly. And I had a colleague that came once and he saw it and he goes, "Oh, you have a Qi machine?" I go, "Yeah, I love this thing. Whenever I get a chance in the middle of the day, I'll use it. Like I'll shut the lights." I brought it upstairs. I used to have it down here in my studio. Now I have it in the bedroom. I just, maybe right after you, I'll go upstairs and I shut the blinds and I lay down. It's dark and I put my feet, and within a minute or two, I'm asleep. Okay. And it automatically shuts off in 15 minutes. And the second it shuts off, it just naturally wakes you up. So it's just a nice little dose in the middle of the day. You get that nice little GH spike, right? And then you feel refreshed afterwards. But I found out why it does this sort of sleep effect. It's because it invokes a reflex that is long-standing. And that is, if your body perceives that you're being rocked by your mother, and that induces sleep. And as silly as it sounds, it actually works. And so the Qi machine is something that I absolutely cherish, and I'll utilize it every once in a while. If I have a break in the middle of the day, I'll simply go upstairs, and I'm much more productive afterwards for that. And I really believe it helps with recovery. So the Qi machine is great.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah. So what was the most amazing achievement your career?
These days, I pride myself on performance achievements. So helping people perform things that they couldn't do before. A push-up, a simple push-up for some people is very challenging. And one thing I pride myself is helping them get to doing a proper push-up for many reps. Chin-ups and dips, for many people, especially females, they find it quite challenging. And so again, I pride myself in getting them to do many reps. I had one lady, 55-year-old, on Monday. She was doing multiple sets of 6 reps of thick bar chin-ups. And we're talking full range of motion, arms fully extended to chin clearing, tempo controlled. These aren't the type of chin-ups you see on most YouTube videos.
What was the tempo?
The tempo is 4010, right? For 6 reps. you know, so it's very controlled. They're not just ballistic with the legs swinging up. I had one girl that could barely do one. This was last month on a 6-week program. And by the end of it, she was doing 4 reps. 4, again, tempo controlled, full range of motion reps. By the end of the year, I'll have her up to 8. You know, these are average, pardon the pun, they're your average Joe, right? That they're not professional athletes. They're not elite athletes. So you hear people, you know, they wear it like a badge of honor, some of these trainers saying, oh, I've got this person doing 12 chin-ups and stuff. These are just average people that they want to get better. They want to get stronger. So I've been priding myself on that. I would say my number one of the top achievements that I had was a 47-year-old male. He ran a retail business. He had hundreds of employees under him. And he was very driven and very disciplined. So he listened to everything I said. And in a 5-month period, he lost 47 pounds. So basically 10 pounds per month. And after the first month, he had gone in for a follow-up with his doctor. She took him off all his meds. He was on a number of meds, including beta blockers and statins. She took him off. She was so impressed. And all his skin fold measurements were cut in half. And his girth measurement, the most pronounced, was his waist. His waist went down 10 inches. He went from a size 46 to a size 36. And he told me that the last time he was 36 waist was in grade 5. So he had a massive transformation, got him down eventually to 190 pounds. And you could see, I have a number of them listed in my book, Lean and Mean. You can see all these different transformations and some of these achievements that we accomplished with this system of training that I have. Yeah.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. So what are bad recommendations you hear in your profession or area of expertise?
I would say, and this one is actually pretty easy. I would say the excessive and counterproductive warm-ups that a lot of trainers recommend. People are shooting themselves in the foot before they even begin their workout. I love how Dan John puts it. He says, think of your body as like an hourglass. The second you start a workout, regardless of what you do, the second you start a workout, flip that hourglass, that's your energy starting to seep out, okay? So if you're gonna do all this mobility work, you're gonna do all this foam rolling, you're gonna do all this cardio to warm you up, an excessive number of repetitions as a specific warm-up, all these things, these are very counterproductive, okay? Some of these will increase lactic acid just a little bit too much. And we know that lactate will start to hinder the recruitment of high threshold motor units. In plain English, it'll make you weaker. It'll lower your energy. Your strength will plummet. Okay. So you start shooting yourself in the foot. So at best, or I should say at worst, you'll have, a poor workout. But even worse than that, you could actually get injured. Right. And so that was one of the first products that I put out was warm up to strength training. And then eventually I wrote a book on it called The Warm Up. But I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that I hear in the profession. And it all starts with the warm up.
Yeah, I see them not a lot, like foam roller, they do IT band. You can stretch your IT band.
No.
Okay, so what are the top 3 common reasons your client come to see you?
Well, health for sure. So a lot of them come in, a lot of them are on a slew of meds, and I assist them in getting off some of these meds through lifestyle modifications. Fitness is definitely another one. So people come in with very poor strength and conditioning, and so I help improve their fitness. But by far, the number one reason most people come to me, what do you think it is?
Feel better.
Okay, feel better is definitely, but mainly to look better. It's always about appearance first and foremost. So vanity plays a huge role. There's no doubt about it. People want to look better. And if they look better, they feel better, right? So, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, you know? So I try to be very holistic in my approach, but I try to kill many birds with one stone, because people only have so much in terms of resources, in terms of time and energy and money that they can spend. So we try to make it the most efficient approach as possible. And that's, again, why I'm such a big fan of strength training if done appropriately.
So what are the top 3 advice you commonly give it to your client? So like, you should do this.
Okay, so we talked about one of the top things to work on for most people is improving their sleep. So first, I tell them, shut off all digital devices at least an hour before going to bed. That's where the blue blockers come in handy. And make sure that your room resembles a cave, okay? In terms of nutrition, I like the Paleolithic saying that if it runs, swims, or flies, or it's green, you can eat it, right? Basically, if it was available to a caveman, eat it, right? So remove all the processed, packaged, refined garbage. And in terms of exercise, do strength training.
Are you personally practice some yoga and meditation too?
I do somewhat. I consider the Chi machine my form of meditation, quite frankly. And yoga, I have an instructor that comes in periodically that does it with me, but I really need to be more diligent with yoga. That's one area that I could increase in the upcoming year for sure. Yeah.
So what are the top 3 things you learned last 2 years?
One would definitely be the value of sodium. What we have found is that sodium, if you're eating a very clean diet, you could be very deficient in sodium. You need about 4 to 5 grams a day for optimal health and performance. In fact, for performance, even more if you're sweating quite a bit. And most people are just not cutting it. Where does the average Canadian and American get their sodium from? It's from all these packaged foods, right? From canned foods, for instance. But if you're not eating that type of food, your sodium intake may be low. There are certain foods like olives, 10 olives is about 1 gram of sodium, 2 pickles, 1 gram of sodium. Zucchini is higher in sodium. There are some foods, but most people aren't getting it. And so sodium I found to be quite beneficial. So we were talking about how when I drink my espressos, it can dehydrate you. Well, what's one of the big knocks against sodium? When you tell people, yeah, I'm going on sodium, they're like, oh, you got to be careful with that. You're going to retain water. That's exactly what you want to do if you're dehydrated. Sodium will help you retain water. It's excellent for your joints. It's excellent for your energy levels, so really boost your energy. So one is the value of sodium. Another one would be neck training. The past 2 years, I've done quite a bit of neck training. And I have found that not only does it help your deadlifts, okay? Because we know the posterior chain is everything really from the ankle right up to the neck, okay? And so that's often neglected, but it will also significantly help your curling and pulling strength. Why? Because if you activate the long cervical extensors, it will help to reposition your cervical vertebrae, and the musculocutaneous nerve exits C4 to C6, which innervates the arms. So if you can activate that and put it in the proper position, it will actually really increase your pulling strength. So excellent for chin-ups, for rows, and for arm curls, right? So neck training is one thing that I've done quite a bit over the past 2 years. And then the last I would say would be the value of D-sets. So you may have heard of D-loads, where you reduce the loads, which may be beneficial if you're like a power lifter, if you're on a specific exercise for a long period of time, maybe 8, 12 weeks or more. Then introducing periodic D-loads is definitely warranted. But We know that overtraining typically is a result of too much volume, not intensity. So I recommend reducing the volume, not the intensity, and you do so via sets, less sets, 40 to 60%. So I would include a D-set week. Now in the past, we used to taper at the end of a workout before commencing a new workout, right? But what I found over the past 2 years, what I've been experimenting with, and it's worked much better, is to D-set the week before your peak week. And that works very well. So if you're on a program for 4 weeks, let's say, D-setting on the 3rd week before your peak week. And then once you commence a new program, it's almost like deloading regardless. So tapering more at the end of the beginning of a workout than the end, and inserting that D-set on the 3rd week rather than the final week works extremely well. So it helps to counter any of these little, sometimes these ailments, these little injuries that may start occurring. The 3rd week you do less, and then you can peak much higher in the 4th. Works like a charm.
Amazing. Yeah. Also, Charles Poliquin also, he'd recommend little baby, put the front sides here. So baby has to look here to strengthen the neck extensor for the protector for the core strength.
So I have a system that I basically rotate from concentric to eccentric to isometric and then back. And in between, I'll insert upper trap movements. So one program would be isometric based. Next program will be some type of shrug. The next program will be eccentric based. And then next program will be another type of shrug or upright row or so, and going in that manner and periodizing in that manner. And then once you come back, utilizing a slightly higher intensity. And so over time, your strength will start to climb, right?
Yeah, yeah. So what is the one thing or you practice, but other average health and wellness professional, they don't practice, but you look at them, they should practice one thing?
Well, when you think of the training process, there's 2 aspects to that equation. There's training, and then there's recovery. Most health and fitness professionals, most personal trainers, they focus on the training part and don't give enough concentration on the recovery part. So in North America, it's all about training. In Eastern Europe and Russia, they actually build restoration methods into their periodization plan. And that's something that I believe quite highly in. And I talk about that quite a bit, from daily walks, doing some strategic cardio for some individuals, or strategic stretching for others, depending on their needs, contrast showers, salt baths, and so on. But body work, one thing that I do that a lot of my colleagues don't, is I set up my body work in advance. So I have a massage therapist, I have an osteopath, I have a chiropractor that does soft tissue work on me, and I set them up at least every 2 weeks. I'm going to see one of them. And people ask me, they say, what's bothering you, John Paul? And I say, well, nothing. And then, well, why are you going to see these people? I said, well, that's the exact reason why I'm going to see them. Because I'm being proactive, not reactive like a lot of people are, right? And so I think it's very important. So if you can afford it, to schedule in your body work, you can do it on your own. I think the massage gun, another device that you were asking about, the massage guns, they're a dime a dozen. You can get them on Amazon these days. That has been a game changer. I use that to adjust the tone, muscle tone accordingly, before, during, and after workouts when necessary, And so something like that is a self-massage that you can do, right? But that's the difference. I incorporate this and I'm being preventative and proactive. Think of your body as a machine. You got to fine tune it, as it gets, right? And that's the key to longevity.
So who's the best massage in Toronto?
I'm a big fan of Mary Tam. She's my girl. So okay. She does structural integration as well. She's on my team. In terms of osteo, Vlodek Klushinsky, he's on my website. You can see some of these people on my website. If you go to theelitetrainer.com and type in bodywork, you'll see. Angelo Gazze is an excellent chiropractor, does a lot of soft tissue work. And that's the key with the chiropractors. You know, if you just go in and they and say, okay, I'll see you next week, don't go back. They have to, in fact, mine doesn't even adjust me. He just does strictly soft tissue work. And if it's something is going to adjust, it does it on its own, you know.
Use a hand or use a hand?
Mainly hand, yeah. Yeah.
Nice. That's right. That's exactly what the body worker they should do. Healer, right?
Right. I agree.
Nowadays a lot of people they don't use hand.
No, I know.
Yeah. So nice. So what did you plan for next 6 months to 2 years?
We practically just completed our website, the catanzarogroup.com. It's 95% complete. So we're just finishing up a few touches there. So that was what I've been working on. I'm working on a new book as well. I was started at the beginning of COVID, but now I'm going to put that into gear. That should be done by the end of the summer. I have a new supplement that will be coming out as well. And one thing that we initiated earlier this year, finally, was software. We're working on new training software. And that's a pretty big endeavor. But I'm hoping by the end of the year, we'll have something at least in beta that we can utilize. So there's quite a few projects on the go. Yeah. Amazing.
Did you get a vaccine?
I'm sorry?
Did you get a vaccine?
A vaccine? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
That's a medical question. You don't ask people a medical question.
Oh, really?
No.
Oh, okay. Yeah, all right. Sorry about that.
You know what? When it comes to the vaccine, this is one thing that I want to say. This whole year has been about COVID, right? And unfortunately, I think we've focused so much on the virus and not enough on the host. And I don't think people realize it takes two to tango. If the host is not hospitable, the virus is not going to hang around and it's not going to cause much harm. So how do you make, for the most part, how do you make the host not hospitable? Well, it's all the things we've been discussing today, right? Getting proper sleep, making sure that you have a sufficient amount of sleep. Nutrition. We know that sugar will depress your immune system for hours. Lower your sugar intake. What about exercise? There was an excellent article that was just published in the British Journal of Sports Medicine that has shown that if you do regular exercise, which is basically 150 minutes plus a week, you have 2.5 times greater chance of a positive outcome if you get COVID. Much better chance of surviving COVID if you do regular exercise. This is the sort of message that we should be getting out. We focus so much on the virus, stop spreading the virus, all this social distancing, wash your hands 1,000,001 times a day, wear a mask, all this stuff we hear constantly. And now the whole focus is on vaccines, which is fine, right? But I don't think we've given enough focus on the host, on the health of the host. We're always going to be presented with viruses going forward, okay? If we can beef up or boost our immunity, right, then it'll improve our chances. And so this is exactly, I don't deal with sickness or disease. I deal with health. That's what I deal with. I help people improve their health. And
amazing.
So if you improve your health, you improve your chances of surviving all this.
Amazing. Yeah, that's right. We should focus on something, our homework, what we can do our part.
What we can control, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Amazing. Is it anything you want to say extra?
I think that one is really a good way to end, because I think if we can get that message across, I think a lot of people are realizing, during COVID, the average North American has gained about 29 pounds, more for the male than females. So, one other little tidbit that people might not realize is by staying locked up in your home all this time, your immune system is like a muscle. It can atrophy. So we need to be able to train it properly, right? I think it's important to get back, if perhaps you've been a little bit slack during COVID, to now gently, slowly get back into the swing of things, start to prioritize your sleep, shut things off at night, make it more of a priority, start to prioritize your nutrition, go back to nature, reduce the sugars, and start to get back to regular exercise, you know? And that's how you're going to get back on track.
Amazing. Thanks for sharing your amazing knowledge and your wisdom, your walk to talk. So I see you like Facebook, and then, you know, you train so regularly and amazing. You're looking amazing.
Thank you.
So thanks for the great example for us. You know, yeah, a lot of people.
My pleasure. Thank you, Trainer Joe. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.